Hello, everyone. We'll give people a couple more minutes to join since we don't have everyone. I know member Kawanabe said he would be 15 to 20 minutes late.
Did any of you get out into the snow besides shoveling?
I went snowshoeing this weekend.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
That was fun. Yeah, we were up near Central City. It was great up there. Gorgeous this weekend. Wasn't this last storm, but it was fun.
Nice.
How about you, member Brinker?
I've been trapped in my house all day in meetings, Zoom meetings, so I'm hoping to live vicariously through you all.
Yeah, I was working today too.
I'm back teaching in person, so I actually get to leave the house for even more reasons. Working at the chiropractic office and teaching.
Wow.
Teaching and fun is so much better than teaching online, though.
Hmm.
Doing it
What
like
do you
this,
teach?
especially when everybody turns off their video, you're just kind of like, am I just speaking into the void? Is anybody even there? Like, I have no idea sometimes when you're online. So being in person is like magical, even if you can't see anything but their eyes. At least you know their eyes are open. It almost feels like normal.
Sorry, I was just reading up on the storm we're going to get tomorrow.
Oh, how much?
It's 50% weaker than Tuesday's snowstorm. It's going to arrive between 7 and 12. The forecasted high is 30 degrees and 1 to 3 inches in the front range, which is so vague. You know, when they say 1 to 3, it really doesn't mean anything that says it.
It's between 0 inches and like a foot is really what it
Yeah,
means.
like a foot. Yeah, exactly. It's like this.
Yeah.
Ready for more feet?
Yeah.
Can I ask if anybody watched the council meeting on Monday?
I have not
I did
yet.
not.
Did you?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, Director DeAndrea spoke. So I have some questions about that, but you know, I would let everybody take away their own opinion of the meeting, because I think that more council people are asking about possibly we could put this on a ballot.
Yes, that's very
And-
possible.
Pardon me?
I said, yeah, that's very
I would like to
that's very
request that
possible.
this outside of meeting chat is, I mean, it's totally cool, but let's not talk about things related to what this
Okay.
committee's about. If you want to
Sorry.
bring things up about your observations from city council regarding that, please use that time at the end, Member Brown.
I will do that.
Oh,
Apologies.
it's okay. Just to,
Will you
know,
accept my apologies, Chair Green?
of course.
With the mountains in back of you?
Do we have enough for a quorum?
I don't think so.
Huh.
I mean, do we, Director DeAndrea?
Yeah, you've got 5 now, so I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So are you going to be taking roll? Or is that?
Michelle's on. Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's call the meeting to order, and it's Ms. Chavez, right? Please take roll.
Okay, Chair Green,
Present.
Vice Chair Borman,
Present.
Member Brinker,
Present.
Member Brown,
Present.
Member Hupka,
Here,
Member Kawanabe, Member Labe, and Director DeAndre.
Present.
All right.
And we did hear from member Kawanabe that he would be joining, but would be 15 to 20 minutes late. So just once he comes on, Ms. Chavez, please note that time. Is there a motion to approve the minutes or any discussion around that?
I will make a motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. Ms. Chavez, please take a vote on approving our minutes from December 14th.
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Boardman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Hupka.
Yes,
I don't see Member Kawanabe yet. Member Labe. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we have recognition of public comment. It's an opportunity for the public to address the Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee. There's an expectation any presentations will be conducted respectfully. The Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee may ask questions for clarifications, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Are either of the attendees present interested in addressing the committee? I see a Gretchen and a V. Do we have communication from them? Should either of them want to? Can they raise their hands? Or
Yes, they should be able to, but I did receive an email as well this afternoon as a public comment.
yeah, I'll address that one too.
Perfect.
Just wanted to give them a chance to speak up if either of them were planning on it, but not seeing any response, assuming neither of them want to say anything. And then, yeah, so our agenda was updated today to include an email. It's, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read it. It's worth reading. It's in the public record as far as what I don't think I need to read the whole thing, but there was a couple points in there that I thought made sense to just make sure are addressed on the record. One was an interesting question that I haven't noticed be brought up throughout our entire time together evaluating this, was a vacation hold request. Having that, be an option. I don't know, Director DeAndrea, that would be something that we should probably at least have a point of discussion around at some point. This was also in favor of alley service from someone who's less able to move cans, and pointing out how important that is in regard to ease of dealing with them. Also interested in the different size options, pay as you throw type request, and concerns about cost. So details in that, please review it. And let's see, still nothing from our attendees. So let's close the recognition of public comment section of our meeting and move into old business. Director DeAndrea, will you please walk us through these, and then we'll, if anyone has any questions, please raise your hands, and that way we can get everyone a chance to ask their questions and make points, etc. So will you please start with Republic responses, Director DeAndrea?
Yep, let me pull that up. Can't I get to it? Sorry. All right. Seem to not get to it.
I can share. Oh,
Here, let me, as I had them all open. I can't seem to see them. So I'll do Republic first. Okay, oh, there's all at the top. Okay, it's just a little smaller. So can I assume that the committee has read through this and maybe I'll just hit some
Director
highlights?
DeAndrea, right now we see your Windows Explorer, not the document.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hmm.
You can probably switch which screen you're sharing if you have multiple, if that's what's going on.
Just have way too much stuff open.
I can share my screen, Maria, if you.
Yeah, would you mind? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Thank you. All right. So can I assume that the committee has read through these and maybe I'll hit some highlights and then I'll answer any questions and then we can move on to the waste management responses. So I think a couple of key points here. We had, and these were some of the questions that we had talked a little bit about last time that I had provided shortly before the meeting. And then as well as shortly then some additional ones that we had as a result of our discussion at the last meeting. So I don't think there is anything too surprising here in those first questions. If you could continue to scroll down, please. And I think, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Michelle, let's talk about that last question there at the bottom of that first page. So just wanted to verify with them that, what is their rate adjustment? And that it would be, if you recall, what we put in the RFP was that it was going to be the first 2 years would be fixed. And then there'd be an annual increase of either 3% or CPI. And so you can see their response there that, what they want to use that water sewer trash index, which in talking to those other references, pretty much everybody uses that. So I think we'd be fine with that because it's the lesser, right, of either of those. But I think, what they're proposing there is that they are willing to do the 2-year fixed, and that, but there is an increase there potentially also for the recycling. So that wasn't, I think, as clear in the proposal as I had originally read it. Yeah, please continue to go down.
So on that, so that's not clear to me either at this point. So you're saying that they want to use, so based on what we said in the RFP, neither of them want to go by what we said, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, first 2 years fixed, and then CPI or 3%, whichever is lesser for each year thereafter, with a max of 1% per year. Is that right?
That's correct. It would go up at either the lesser of the CPI or the 3% per year. But both
capped at a
but
and
not
both of them
capped.
have
So we,
rejected the cap,
correct, yeah,
and both of them wanted to switch from CPI to WST.
correct.
And WST, based on when we get to that in the information you provided, it was like since 98, it's an average of 7% or something like that.
Mhm.
And the CP, but these would still be based on whichever is lesser between 3% or WST, but they're taking the cap away. So it would effectively basically end up being 3% every year.
Correct, yeah.
And then they're saying on top of that, also an additional increase related to recycling.
Yes, so that's a question for Republic a little bit later on. So remember, and for waste management, there was this idea of that value share. So they started with a higher dollar amount for their recycling. We have the option to consider their value share, which would lower it, but there's risk there, if you recall that. So each of them have, I would say, like a asterisk related to the recycling.
Okay, so you're saying there's more detail that we'll go over about specifically Republic and what they're
Yes.
saying about the increase on recycling?
Yeah.
Okay,
And a
Member
local
Brown, you have a
question.
question?
Yeah, I'm seeing that when I'm reading this is currently the local CPI is over 6%. And then they're talking about the problem with the CPI in your RFP. It's not the 2 years fixed, it's the language that the PI is capped at 3%. So are they not willing to cap it at 3%?
I think they are. They again, there's another question lower down that clarifies this. This was the first response. Then I asked them more precisely to answer the yes or no. So we can go through that question here in a minute,
Okay, thank
if
you.
you wouldn't mind. Yeah. So we talked about, that this was a longer time period, so they would not implement until spring of 2023. So just an FYI there. And then you can see they're kind of centered on the page. Does Republic intend to adhere to the city's rate structure of initial rate for years 1 and 2, followed by the lesser of the CPI or 3% annual increases? Yes or no? And then if no, please explain. So their answer was yes and no. So as you can see there, so they do intend to adhere to the fixed price for the first 2 years. And then after that, the third year would be subject to that increase of the CPI, the water sewer trash index. And see, they're not saying though that they would meet the 3%. They're just saying they want to follow the water sewer trash index, which would be more than 3% based on the history. As it says, their current, so their, the water sewer trash is running about 3.7%. And then, they could give us an option to just do an annual rate increase at 3.5%. So they're not willing, it sounds like when I read this, to adhere to the 3% annual increase.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And then, I also asked the question, do your annual rate increases include adjustments for the recycling market? Again, I don't think this was really clear in the proposal. And so there would be an increase there. So as they say there, their net processing costs are a certain amount. And then if Inglewood entered into a contract, they would go with the net processing number at the time of the contract execution. So it might be higher than the $52 or less than that. But that they would anticipate that the rates for recycling would be in addition to the annual rate increase. So let me give you, it says here, let me give you an example how it worked in a decrease, which again, so it's similar, I think, somewhat to what Waste Management is proposing is that as the recycling market fluctuates, they would either give us a credit or a debit based on, basically we're sharing that risk with them. And then they used an example, it looks like from Commerce City there. Similar again again, I don't think this was very clear to me. You guys can weigh in on that if you felt you understood this from just reading the proposal. But I think, we would have to factor this into then what are the annual rate increases, and it's going to be somewhat, it sounds like, fluctuate a little bit if we decide to move forward. Okay. And then I think the other stuff was fairly straightforward. Yeah, so they're just at the last part of that question or response was that that they would charge 8 cents per customer per month for processing increase. So again, just what would that amount be if it was over the $52 per ton? What would we, so we can, at least they gave us a dollar amount that we could factor in there. We did ask about the monthly service for door to door, and that they responded that this would apply to everyone. So you could pay for it if you wanted it, but that the people who it was really intended for, those disabled persons, and only then, and I still didn't understand if they were going to pay, would require us to pay for, or elderly and physically enabled would still have to pay for that or not. And then we had the days of when their normal business hours are for responding to customer service. So any questions about that, or you want to talk about that further?
Member Hubka?
There's a few questions, yeah.
Well, it's about this, and it's kind of about the handicap thing, and it's in response to our citizen GE, who is a senior citizen. Didn't we structure a senior citizen discount in the contracts or on behalf of the city?
We talked about it, but we never included anything like that. I think that would be on our end or on the city's side as we bill, would we offer some sort of discount?
Yeah, the only discussion, Member Hubka, that I remember on that was potentially using fines to fund something like that. But yeah, I mean, we wouldn't want to, depend on fines, especially after seeing the examples of all of the references that we went through where they all said they haven't even done any fines.
Yeah.
Well, Maria,
do you have anything else, Member Hubka?
Well, yeah, I'm just asking city staff if they feel comfortable that that's something that they can negotiate, and because I know the city council will probably be asking about that. Do you think that's something that you'll be negotiating and including going forward?
The senior citizen discount, I'm sorry, Member Hupko, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yes, I'm the senior citizen discount.
Yeah, I think then the question is to Chair Green is where would the funding come from that? So is the city basically willing to subsidize that at a certain amount for senior citizens? I think that would be the policy discussion for council.
Vice Chair Foreman?
Yeah, I do remember similar to you guys where it was related to fines and things like that, so we could subsidize people who are of limited funds, things like that. The other thing I just wanted to say is I feel like, especially if we've gone through these additional questions, I feel like Republic is not willing to be flexible with us because they're not willing to do the large item pickup. They're still not wanting to do our CPI increases and things like that. And adding on kind of these other things that are, I don't know, I find kind of frustrating, like not allowing curb service for the elderly and things like that. I sort of feel like they're sticking their tongue out at us a little bit on some of this stuff. I don't know, just perspective.
Yeah.
Member Brown?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Vice Chair Borman on what he just said. Also, I find some of this verbiage very vague. And also, I mean, how would the city or council, how would they know if people are disabled or not? You know, I mean, I do remember the conversation when we discussed that we would, you know, help with maybe them with the fines or whatever. But how do we know if they're disabled?
Yeah,
I
it's a good
mean,
question. I
is
mean,
our money going to, you know, people who are taking advantage of the situation? And I'm not saying they would, but, you know, there's always one or two out there.
We'd have to establish criteria. So right now, like for your water sewer utility bill, there we do have through Arapahoe County, you can apply for if you're economically disadvantaged. And so I think there's criteria that Arapahoe County uses to screen that. So I'm assuming, I think we looked at one other city that had a senior citizen discount, and maybe there's some criteria around what disabled, how we define that. That would then, if you have to, let's say, bring in show your handicap placard or something, or, you know, maybe a note from the doctor. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out, but there probably have to be some criteria established around that.
Right. And can I just, so if you're a senior citizen, are we still talking about possibly getting them discounts?
Yeah, I think that's, Member Hupka just brought that up. I think as we bring, you know, again, the committee and the great comments from the citizen, and I'm sure we'll get more, all of those different ideas will be brought back to city council to consider that. So again, I think that's a policy question, less for the proposers or the haulers, as more of how is the city would structure that program, and do they wish to offer some sort of discount to seniors, and if so, then how is that going to get paid? For the haulers, it's a house is a house is a house, so they're not going to necessarily provide a lesser cost for those types of households.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It would have to be up to city council.
Member Brinker?
Yeah, I feel like the discussion about door to curb service for disabled residents is different from the conversation about a blanket price reduction for seniors. Maybe those are two separate issues. And
Yeah.
if we were talking about a rate discount for seniors, I would be more inclined to change that to assistance for all low income families
Thank you.
rather than an age-based thing.
Sure. And then I just wanted to add on a little bit to what Vice Chair Borman said. I agree with the points he made, and another one you made that you left out was that they also had the 0 opt-out. But I would also argue that I feel that the waste management one is equally inflexible, because at least Republic is not pushing back on what has been brought up by citizens as the most important thing, being alley service for both trash and recycling, and waste management is completely pushing back on that. So
yeah.
Please continue, Director DeAndrea.
Okay. So if we're good with Republic, I'll move on to waste management. Thank you, Michelle. Okay. So again, and it's attached here at the end, that kind of written response, which they called additional clarifications to proposal. So I won't go through that. I think the key here was we wanted to further define what does limited alley service mean. And according to them, and just as so you know, I cut and pasted their exact text. So this wasn't me interpreting, this was their exact text in response to my questions.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So what they're saying is that only customers that currently have alley service would be able to continue to have alley service. So I think that's a big consideration.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if-
that's significantly against what we know citizens care about. Because a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
I-
people have had their alley service taken away.
Correct.
And just to address, remember Brinker brought up in your email, is it okay if I just make your point?
Please. Yeah, please.
So remember Brinker brought up, another thought towards this was making it to where if any one home on an alley currently has alley service, that would be the criteria for which
Yeah.
alleys get alley service. And personally, I feel like that's not fair or right. I mean, I know that it seems arbitrary because who knows which entire alleys that might exclude because people have jumped around trying to get reasonable service again when providers have changed things around. To me, the alley thing is critical based on citizen input. And that's why, to me, like, Republic is still worth considering, even though they're pushing back on a lot of things. Whereas Waste Management is, they're not only rejecting trash on alleys consistently, but they're also saying no recycling on alleys at all, even though they provided that for 20 plus years until recently.
Mhm.
Vice Chair Borman.
I was just going to comment that, I don't know, I guess I've had Waste Management for about 11 years now, and we've never had the ability to recycle in the alleyway. It's always been curbside. That was in our contract when we came into it. It's when we bought our house here in 2011. And it was one of those things that I don't know, I have my garbage in the back and I have my recycling in the front. The one nice thing for me is that recycling is less stinky. And so when I put it in recycling in my garage, which is up front, I put my garbage out back, and it's further away from the house, but I also don't have to keep it in the garage. So I guess the recycling in the alleyway, I'm not willing to die on that hill, but I do understand that some people only have that access. So yeah, it's been interesting. Did Republic say they were going to recycle in the alleyway? I don't
Yeah, they
remember.
accepted the
So-
RFP as it stands, requiring every home to be able to choose curb or alley for trash and recycling.
Okay.
Member Hubka?
Well, first I was going to say, I can't believe, I was not aware that some people have trash out front and recycling in the back, or vice versa. That's insane. I would scream about that. But also, it still doesn't make sense. Does Waste Management, what about people who have Republic today and get service in the alley? Will Waste Management continue to service them in the alley? You see, it's still
Yeah,
like.
it's just,
do
I
they need
agree.
just-
It's arbitrary
Waste
as well.
Management? Yeah, just Waste Management customers in the alley today. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to call them tomorrow, and I'm going to switch. My trash service is with what's that other company? Waste.
Connections.
Yes, and it's way hot, and it's really expensive. And I just keep not doing it because I think we're going to do this. But Waste Management will get me down to $25 a month plus fees and all that crap. But I'm going to request alley service just to see what they're going to do. I may do that tomorrow. Anyway, I'm sorry. Those are my two thoughts. I do think that if we make a recommendation at all, it's all about the alleys.
Agree. Thank
Yeah.
you, Member Hubka.
Just a quick comment. It's not that weird as long as you're like, I have a pad sitting in back that is for my garbage. So it would fit garbage and recycling out on that single pad in the alleyway. But I just leave the garbage outside all the time in the alleyway, and then the recycling has to go in and out of the garage. I don't mind it, but I can understand.
I can see
Some
that.
people would be like,
Yeah.
that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So
Yeah, Yeah, that wouldn't be bad, as long as you're not dragging two barrels, two directions all the time, then that makes some sense.
Were there other comments on this? Okay, please continue, Director DeAndrea.
If you could continue to scroll down, please. I take a little bit of exception here where it says that the RFP did not stipulate the number of alley customers, nor did it provide the number of potential alley customers. Well, we don't know that. And I think the language in the RFP is such that we want to give people the choice. So I don't think we have the ability to be able to say who wants it right now. The only thing we know is that people have been forced out of the alley because their service won't allow for pickup anymore. So my side comment.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, since we know that, and Vice Chair Borman, I've been around a bit longer, and Waste Management did used to do both in the alley. And actually, when they switched that, I switched. And then I had one that did it for Lee's, did it both there forever. And then American did it. And then like keep getting bought up and changing around. And Republic is willing to do it. So I get that Waste Management is like pushing against that. I did one thing that was interesting is that they did bring up the question of would we consider an additional fee for alley service? I don't think that that's reasonable considering Republic's willing to do it without that, but there's also downsides to Republic. So, I mean, that's something that we should probably at least acknowledge and consider.
Well, and I think put that in the proposal, instead of asking the question after the fact, make that part of your proposal.
Yeah,
I guess.
I agree with you, Director DeAndrea. It's frustrating how both are pushing back so hard against what we've asked for, but.
Yeah, so I think there we talked about the.
Oh, we have an attendee with a hand up, which is,
Okay.
Oh, it's, never mind. It's, Member Kawanibe's here. I'll switch him over. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, okay, great. All right, so there we talked about, that they would only provide recycling at the curb. And then here's the rate structure. So they said specifically, so I worded the question exactly the same for each hauler. So their response was no, prices listed for year 1 of the contract, for years 2 through 7 or 10, the annual, so they're saying that they would not honor year 2 at the 3%. But they would do the 3% for the remaining years. So again, a little asterisk there. Does that make sense to everybody?
Not exactly to me. So
Okay.
they're saying that they wouldn't do the 2 years fixed.
Correct. I think they're saying they generally would follow what we requested, where it's the lesser of the 3%, or in this case, now they in their proposal said they wanted to use the sewer trash index 2. And here they're saying they're referencing the Denver Aurora Lakewood CPI. But I think what the difference is that they wouldn't honor the year 2 at the same price as year 1.
Okay, so they're saying year 1, whatever the price we agree to, but then every other year increasing by the lesser of 3% or whichever of the indexes it ends up being, with no cap, which is also
Correct.
against what we had said.
Well, we had 2 options, if you recall. We had the option with the 1% per year cap or just the straight 3%. Nobody bid or provided costs for the 1% annual increase or 1% cap. We had 2 different pricing structures in there.
Did they both start with the 2 years fixed?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then, so one of them was after the second year, it increased 1% every year. And the other was the lesser of 3% or the CPI.
I think it was still the lesser of the 3% or the CPI, but it was then a maximum, if it was a 7-year contract, a 7% for the overall length of the contract. So you could go up 3% for a couple of years, and then you'd have 1% essentially left.
Right, but both of them
Nobody
now have,
bid on that. Yeah,
both of them have effectively responded with a 3% increase every year.
correct. Yeah. Well, and I think Republic's was that they want to go by the water sewer trash index, not that they would not hold to the 3%. They would agree to the 3.5% per year.
Okay. And we're not really clear why waste management flip-flopped from WST to CPI.
No,
Okay.
but
and
again, I
maybe-
think it's the lesser, so does
Yes.
it really matter? I don't know.
Well, considering CPI and WST historically are higher than 3, we're really looking at 3.
Yep. And here, I think they were clear about the door to curb service, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, one sec.
Oh,
Director
yeah.
DeAndrea, Member Brown just raised her hand.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we go by 3%, isn't that roughly $9 per year based on a $300 yearly bill?
Let me calculate that. I'm not going to do math on the fly.
No, I don't know.
I get in trouble that way.
So would I.
I'm just curious.
3%.
Member Brinker's nodding.
Roughly 75 cents per month is what I've come up with. If I, that,
Based
I'm
on
just
what,
taking it off
$25?
$25, yeah.
I'm sorry, Member Hubka, I didn't hear you.
If it's $25 a month, 3% more, it's 75 cents per month. I don't want them to raise our price either, but I never really thought that the way we structured it was practical for any competitor to walk in here. But I think the Republic response of keeping to what was that CPI you mentioned, the sewer or
6.7?
yeah. No.
the
Keeping in line with
WST.
other yeah. Keeping in line with other industry. I think that's practical and I think we could live with it. Our structure was pretty limiting for any company to walk in here, but it still keeps them from going crazy with inflation.
Okay, but doesn't 75 cents a month times 12 equals about $9?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's, that's
But then
right,
it
$9 per
compounds
year.
too.
Yeah. So roughly, $9 per year.
Okay.
I think either of these are not what we asked for, but both are within the realm of reason. Of all the potential deal breakers in the proposals, I don't think this is one of the top ones.
Yeah, I agree with Member Brinker. I mean, I don't like having the price go up for 10 years or whatever so much. Especially considering it seems like my price hasn't gone up remotely that much over the last 22 years I've been here. But there's other things that are far more important, in my opinion as well. Member Hubka?
Just as a Google search, FYI, the consumer price index for 2021 was 7%. Just, there you go.
Thank
So
you.
you know.
And that'll actually be in once we get there, we have a whole section on because Director DeAndrea included a bunch of information from our request that we'll go over on that. Vice Chair Borman.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I agree with the pricing, like that's 3% at least we're holding them to the lesser of those. Because my waste management bill, we looked at it after about 6 or 7 years and it'd gone up a lot. And we were comparing with neighbors and stuff like that. And we actually had to call them and be like, hey, what the heck? Why are we paying, 50% more than a neighbor? And they literally just said, well, how much is your neighbor paying? And we actually, they did lower the bill back down, at least temporarily, but it's gone back up, again, probably 5, 6, 7%. And that doesn't even include the fees. So been a little frustrating, but
That's what.
I feel like it's just like the cable bill and stuff like that. They try and nickel and dime you till you get annoyed.
Member Brinkert, oh,
I-
you lowered your hand?
Yeah, for what it's worth, all my neighbors have been saying that their trash rates have gone up and ours did too.
Y'all should be taking advantage of that waste services deal. Member Brown?
That went up too. I checked after our discussion.
It's still
Um,
21 a month for me for both.
Yeah,
for
and
new
I'm,
customers on their website, it doesn't say 16 anymore, it says 19, and I think plus recycle would be 25, which is actually in the same range of the prices we were getting
Mhm.
for trash and recycle from these bids.
Interesting. That'd be worth comparing because I'm definitely still getting 21. Member Brown?
Yeah, I'm still paying 16 a month.
Right. So that's their rate for trash without recycling, right?
And yes, and
But
could I
be
just add
grandfathered.
could I just add one thing? I noticed in December, was December 15th, where it was on the 3000 block of South Grant where there were sofa pads out there from a couch. And they had waste connections. And when I came back around at 11 a.m., they had picked up everything. So apparently Waste Connections will pick that stuff up for you at the same charge. Just throwing that.
Well, we don't, I mean, that's a speculation. We don't know that they're charging them or not. It's possible that they did. And it's also like, we can't go by anecdotes like that for overall policy that would have, be written in for everyone.
But see, Chair Green, I've done that before.
Well, and I grew up knowing that you could give a 6-pack to the trash hauler and they would take anything, but we can't like build city policy around that.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that I've thrown things out there before and they've picked it up and they have not charged me extra. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right. I understand. Thank you. Did you have something, Member Hubka? Oh, your hand went down. Never mind. All right, please continue, Director DeAndrea.
Yeah, thank you. So I think here they were a little bit more specific about the door to curb service, is that it was intended, the fee would only apply if you wanted to have that extra service. So they would cover disabled people would receive that at the regular base rate. And I'm assuming then they would have some criteria for how they would screen those folks. So they could help us with that as well.
And I forget, did they also offer it at a price if you wanted to do it as a convenience thing and you weren't disabled?
Yeah, so it was $10
Okay.
per month additional. So,
Okay.
and it looks here like they would allow you to pay that extra $10 to do that.
Okay.
Whereas Republic said it was not meant for just anybody.
And you'd have to pay.
And you still have to pay just if you're disabled. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to be more specific that because I think they were a little bit wishy-washy in the language about responding within 1 day. And they did verify here that they would respond within the 1 day.
I had this when I was going through this, I had the same notes. I was like, wait a minute. And then I saw that you added the second question. Thank you.
And then I think that might have been it. Let's see. Oh yeah, this was, I think, an oversight on their part that they never put in a price for that second cart. Let's say you have a large family, you need 2 garbage cans, and then they're offering it here for an additional $5 per month, which I think is a good price. So.
Anybody else have anything on so far? Okay, thank you. So that was jump back in our, so we've gone through old business, the responses to the questions from Republic and Waste Management. Thank you, Director DeAndrea, for taking us through those. And now let's look into new business. And our first one is the references memo. So let's talk through those, because I think those bring up several interesting questions. I know I have questions and points on several of them.
Yeah, that was very helpful to talk through this. So with these, this was each a phone conversation. So I did summarize based on my phone conversation with each entity.
And you did all the phone conversations yourself, Director DeAndrea?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, I can expand if there's something that's unclear within
Yeah,
each
cool.
But very, very interesting. And I think too, again, it's like there's not a cookie cutter approach. You know, I think it's each city and it's evolved over time. A lot of waste managements they've had them for 20 to 30 years in some cases. And so they've evolved, but think, Member Brinker, you used the word grandfather in. So there's some that they've had such a long-standing relationship that they're getting a really good price, they work within their community, you know, really well because they've been there so long. And then newer places are still figuring out whether it's Republic or Waste Management, they're still figuring out the bugs as they go along with some of the newer contracts. And they're seeing more costs associated with that risk sharing associated with recycling. A few of them have had to get creative in terms of not raising the rates to accommodate the changes in the recycling market. And so I think you can see in here, two of them have gone to they used to have every week recycling and have since gone to every other week recycling to keep those costs down and absorb some of those costs associated with the rising rates for just the lack of market, if you will, for recycling products. So again, I'll just maybe hit some highlights here. Overall, though, I would say for both companies, both all of the references gave them very high marks in terms of customer service. And I think, as you mentioned, Chair Green, nobody has really inflicted penalties. So there were several that have that. Probably it sounds like the most stringent was Lafayette, and they have not gone to the point where they've gone like sort of threatened, but never really imposed any kind of fees. And I think across the board, whether there's penalties or not, they've always found that the company in either case is more than willing to go out and figure out, you know, what's going on, what's happening to resolve the issue. And when there are issues like missed pickups or whatever, it tends to be, you know, a new driver who may not be familiar with the situation or something else going on that if they address that kind of core issue, it resolves itself going forward. Let's see here. I think, was it Lafayette there has had great success with the curbside large item drop-off events. So now they're Republic. And they really well received by the community. They are getting ready, I think, to reissue an RFP, and they would obviously include that again. And she was surprised when I told her that they wouldn't even, you know, they didn't even give us a price on that. So again, I'm not sure, you know, the reasoning they gave us was that they just didn't have the manpower to do that. And again, here's a community where they're currently doing that. And it's been very, very successful.
Director DeAndrea, could I interrupt you for a minute?
Please. Yeah.
Could you just roll it back a little bit to the following page? Okay, so right there, it says billing is performed by the city as part of the utility bill. Residents are allowed to opt out of the program, i.e. they do not need to participate, but Republic is not going to let us.
Exactly.
Opt out.
So Edgewater, what was it about? What size are they? If you could scroll up just a little bit more, Michelle. Yeah, they're a population of about 5,000. So probably roughly, you know, if you 3 people, so about probably somewhere around 1,500 homes roughly, then this is the program that they have in place. So I don't know why, and maybe it's just the circumstances currently, their inability to get, you know, workers, but they were not what it seems like. Edgewater is very similar to what we were proposing, similar to Lafayette to some degree as well. And Republic Services is not willing to give us those same options.
Do you know why? I mean, I kind of find that strange that they allow other cities to do that, but not us.
Yeah, I think like they said in their response, because we asked them that question, is that, you know, I don't think they're able to get the manpower the way that they could in the past. So they probably negotiated this a few years ago with Edgewater. I think he had said they've had it in place. Oh, there it says, yeah, since 2010. So they've had an 11-year experience with them. And so if that was how they structured it to begin with, it probably was not that big of a deal. And now Republic has to honor, until they would go out for new service or a new RFP, they would have to honor that contract. Whereas with us, now we're starting fresh, and whether it's workload or staffing or equipment or whatever, they're not willing to give us those options.
I
Okay, thank-
apologize. My computer shut down. I believe it was a power fluctuation. But I missed the beginning of that. So what were you talking about, the difference between an existing contract and starting a new one?
Yeah, Member Brown had just asked, you know, why would Republic offer those same services like the curbside large item pickup, the opt-out, you know, these different things for these cities. And my guess is that, you know, they put these contracts in place a while ago. They were amenable to those options then. And now when they're bidding our contract, they're not amenable at this time, basically, whether that's due to staffing shortages or equipment or whatever.
And when you remember Kawanabe, go ahead.
Yeah, so from what you're saying, Director, is this they just put up their best and last offer? There's no going back and forth from this point forward?
No, I think there is room for negotiation, but some of these big points, like, you know, the large item pickup, I think our options are limited to, you know, they won't do it at the curb. Just like waste management won't do necessarily the alley collection across the board. So I think some of those major points, I think we can nuance that in negotiations, but I don't think we're going to go wholesale back to maybe where we want to be. Like, let's say with Republic, with the large item pickup events on a certain, you know, Saturdays of the year. I think they're going to require that if we go with them, we would have to do the large item pickup in a park or at the service center or something.
Got it. And
Yeah.
moving forward, do we have some way of knowing like this specific issue is just non-negotiable?
I think that's where the committee weighs in. So, you know, I think that's your recommendation back to the city council is, how do you feel about that? You know, where can we possibly live with those terms and conditions as we're talking in more detail, and when the city perhaps be willing to consider that?
Makes sense. Thank you.
I had a question on, so for each of these that said they do a pay as you throw, did you get any kind of breakdown on that? Was it 2 different sizes? Was it more than that?
I think I didn't ask that specifically, but I think when we had done the original, you know, looking at the different prices at different communities, most of them offer the 3 different sizes. So typically 32, 64, and 96.
And then the other thing that Edgewater had was, or several of them do, but a complete opt-out as well, right?
Correct. And it sounds like with no penalty, or, you know, you don't have to pay the minimum. Or in the minimum, like with Arvada, is pretty low. So they do have a fair amount of opt-out in Arvada. And I think it was up in the 30% range. They are waiting to see if HOAs close out their contracts and go with the new service. But they have a fairly large opt-out rate, but that minimum cost, which Republic is requiring them to pay, is pretty minimal. So it hasn't, but people are still upset about that, definitely. But it's not in the 20-some dollar range like we
So
talked about.
Are Edgewater and Arvada combined here in this one?
No, Arvada's, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Arvada's further down.
Because it does talk about Arvada in the Edgewater one. They have had some issues with staffing when Republic took on Arvada's contract. Oh, I see.
Yes.
That's when they
Mhm.
took on Arvada in addition to Edgewater. Okay.
Yeah, so Edgewater has been serviced since 2010. Arvada just came on within the past 6 to 9 months. And so it sounds like Edgewater saw a decrease in service, maybe because they were trying to spread those staff around. When maybe it was coincidental, but the city manager said that they saw a decrease in service as Arvada came online.
Member Kawanabe, did you have another question?
I did not. Apologies.
No problem. Member Brinker?
About the opt-out fee, I think the reason Arvada had 30% opt-out is because they didn't require HOAs to be in the program at all, and no penalty for not being in the program. And so I think that might change once the HOAs, like you said, reevaluate as their contracts come up. So I think we could take their opt-out rate totally with a grain of salt as essentially inapplicable. And as I recall, when I looked a while ago, their opt-out rate for everyday households was their minimum level of service. And the difference is that they got a heck of a deal for really low prices, maybe because they don't have alleys. So their opt-out fee, I thought it was, I don't know, $8 or something, their minimum service rate. And that's the same thing that Republic told us, is that the opt-out would be the minimum service rate. The only difference is that for us, their minimum service rate was 20-something dollars. So I think compared to Arvada, we're getting essentially the same structure.
So you're saying Arvada does not have alleys?
Right, by and large.
Okay, but Edgewater, it said 90%.
Yeah, so I was guessing what Director Andrea was guessing is that they were grandfathered in and had an earlier contract where that arrangement was more feasible from Republic's perspective.
Right, but I mean, in our case, with the way that our RFP is structured with, you know, it could be every other house, curb and alley. They've accepted that and built that in, which, you know, that's probably, you know, more burdensome overall than maybe these grandfathered ones that are like all one or the other. I doubt that there's too many cities that have the structure that we put into the RFP, but Republic did accept that completely.
And their prices showed it.
Yeah.
Well,
especially with the opt-out.
Lots of things went into the prices, but yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Or did you have anything else, Member Brinker? Okay.
Right.
Please continue, Director DeAndrea. Sorry, I got kicked off. That was very unusual.
Yep. So I didn't bug Louisville. Obviously, they've got bigger issues to deal with right now.
Oh, did you already do Lafayette while I was disconnected?
A little bit, you know, again, I think all I mentioned there was that they are considering going out for a new RFP. And I had mentioned to the lady that I spoke with, Elizabeth, you know, they have the large item pickup at the curb. It's very well received by residents. And it'd be a big part of what they would want to continue with their service going into the future. And I mentioned to her that they didn't even give us a price, you know, for providing that service. And so that was of interest to her.
What did she say about, have they already tried negotiating for that, for their new?
No. So they're just, you know, they've been on the service again since 2014. So they've got about 7 years in. So they're just in the process of looking at, do they go out with a new RFP what are they going to do? They're thinking, they're contemplating their next steps right now.
Do you have a sense or know for these cities how long their contracts were?
It sounds like many of them were like either a 3 to 5, and then they've continued it each year. So they have the ability within their contract to continue it on a year-to-year basis.
So you didn't see any that were beyond, or you didn't find out about any that were beyond 5?
The only one I saw in detail was, I believe it was Edgewater's that I received. And I believe theirs was 5, with the ability to continue to, on a year-to-year basis, continue it.
And has city staff considered what the structure of ours would be? Like if we did a 5 or 7 or 10 year, would the city's plan be to build into that it could continue at the same terms after that? Or what are you thinking on there?
Yeah, we're fine doing the 5, 7, or 10. We're good with that. It's just subject to what we call annual appropriations. So basically you can't say in 2022 that in 2025 we commit to spending this money. So there's always this, it's called a TABOR provision.
Right.
That requires, so the current city council authorizes the budget for the next year. They can't commit future city councils to expenses. So there's always that caveat, which is, it's so well known within Colorado that companies understand that. The way that our current contract is written is that we would have, let's say it's on a professional service contract, we do usually have the ability to continue 2 one-year extensions on whatever the length is of the contract we enter into.
Oh, that's standard language in that construction oriented agreement that, okay.
We had the sample attached to the RFP.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Kawanabay?
That's interesting that they went year to year after the 5 years. Then why wouldn't they change those terms like the curb pickup if they weren't going to do those any longer?
Yeah.
I think
that
just seems incongruent to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
just a comment, not a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we'll keep going on. I think Commerce City, they just recently switched from Waste Management to Republic in 2020. And Commerce City is unique in that the citizens don't receive a bill. So the city pays for it through their general fund. So there isn't the whole billing aspect with Commerce City, which is great for citizens. Probably the things that are a little bit different there, they've continued to have the large item pickup curbside again. So very well received by the community.
And that's a recent contract. That's from 2020.
It is. Yep. They do have the maximum. They have a cost increase of 4%. So I think that's the highest that I've seen. But other than that, they're a fast growing city. They're adding accounts every single, month, pretty much. They've grown tremendously. And so they have had some issues too with these kind of shared driveway situations. They don't have very many alleys, probably less than 10. But they have had some issues with these shared drives where you have multiple houses kind of centered around a central driveway. That's what he had mentioned. But overall, they've had really good luck, and their missed pickup rate is, really, really high. So, or non-missed pickup rate, I should say. That, it's very rare. And again, that they're really great about addressing issues promptly.
Member Brinker?
Even though the costs are covered in taxes and not on your utility bill, do you have any sense of per household what it does cost?
I think they're in the $18 to $19 range, but I can verify that.
Wow.
And that's with large item pickup at the curb? Is it a 2-time event kind of thing, or how's that work? Is it vouchers?
I think he just said it was 1 time per year. Let me see if 2 vouchers per year. Yep. Oh, excuse me.
one big thing per year and then 2 vouchers for
Yeah,
random pickups.
where you can just call whenever to get, them come to your house to get stuff. Yeah,
So a
it's
lot closer to what we had put in the RFP.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did you have more, Member Brinker? Keep going.
And so since this is rather recent and fairly similar to what we're looking for, what do you attribute the difference? Do you think it is just the difference of alleys and not versus not alleys?
Yeah, I think, we would have, we would have 2 different types of vehicles. I think they've been pretty straightforward in that. So that's obviously adding to the cost. And I think just the labor shortages in general, I think they mentioned that in just the rollout dates. We would, again, if we wanted to move forward, we were shooting for this fall, hopefully, if there's interest. Now they're saying next spring before they would even commit to rolling this out. So I think it's just really the recent past here, COVID, this would have been, well, I guess they were just December of 2020. That would have been during COVID. So yeah, I'm just supposing at this point.
Well, it said it started January 2020. So they would have negotiated that before COVID.
That's true. Yeah. Probably earlier in 2020.
Well, in 19, if the service started in 2020, January.
Oh, excuse me, January 2020. Yeah. So yeah, pre-COVID.
Member Brown?
It says there that, the city pays for all services, so no citizens pay directly through a utility bill. I mean, why can't we get that same deal? And also, another question would be, if the citizens are not getting a direct bill, do you think the Commerce City bills them through different ways, like property taxes?
No. So I used to work there, so I have a
Right.
little bit
okay.
more familiarity with the program. So it's straight from the general fund. So yeah, I mean, there's sales and use tax, makes up a good portion of city's revenue plus property tax, but there is not a way or a method that the city uses to go back and charge those garbage costs to the citizens. It's really fantastic, and that was established a long time ago, and has just continued. And Denver's the same way, where they basically absorb those costs within the city's budget. And they're now talking about possibly changing that and then charging customers. So I know that they had talked about it a few times. A few people had brought that up at Commerce City about, charging citizens for that service. And it kind of fell dead at each time.
And I'm sorry, why can't Inglewood do the same thing and take it from their general fund?
Well, I think then, we basically use all the money that we take in right now. So we'd have to increase taxes or cut in other areas in order to do that.
Member Brinker?
I was going to comment that I think Thornton also incorporates it into their
Okay.
taxes. So you don't pay, you pay, but not monthly on your utility bill.
Okay.
Director DeAndrea, since you work there and you're familiar with the structure, can you explain a little bit about the difference between the income for the city of Inglewood and the income of Commerce City, and how that, where does that come? There must be some difference. Is it just sales and tax? Is it county property tax that goes to the city, or how does that work?
Now, I'll caveat that I'm not the finance person, so
Sure.
I'll give you, what and I have not made that comparison. I would guess that, it's again, that was a long-standing practice at Commerce City. And so they've basically built their budget around assuming that a portion of the general fund each year goes to trash service. So it's more about how they've developed over time. There is a fair amount of industrial industry up there too, industrial properties, which generates a higher level of sales and use tax than, let's say a Target store or something like that, or a restaurant. So they do have that really good industrial base, which allows them, especially in times of, let's say, people are buying less or whatever, there's less fluctuation in that because they're still, those industries are still producing.
So a big part of it is just partly the difference in percent of homes versus businesses that generate more taxes.
Yeah. And I think then, past practice about, that was always a part of the budget. And so you have to basically make accommodations in other areas to account for that.
Member Brinker?
I would be curious if I could ask Member Brown, how your general opinion about how you think people here would react if we included it in our taxes, but we had to raise our taxes to cover it.
Well, for me as a homeowner, I would not appreciate that. I can't speak for everybody, but no, I don't think they would want that. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. I was just hoping that we could follow Commerce City's way of doing things. Because it would be nice, right? If the city paid for our trash.
I
Oh, yeah. I
Googled
was
really
guess-
quick. Oh, sorry, I just
Um,
Googled really quick the sales tax rate in Commerce City total, including city, county, et cetera, is 9.25%. Here in
Oh,
Inglewood,
wow.
we're at
Very good.
7.75.
Yep.
So it
Okay.
is significantly higher, but it's sort of like the people don't notice when it's a couple pennies here and there. And so maybe it would be more well received than charging. I don't know. An interesting idea.
Member Hubka?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add that our property tax goes through Arapahoe County, and Inglewood is among the lowest in the entire metro area. Very, very low. And city council is going to be reluctant to raise sales tax because we are trying to draw more businesses and more shoppers here. So the burden is going to be on the trash consumer in this instance. And I don't think it's too bad of a burden. It would be a really nice deal. But then again, you got to remember Commerce City is, it is industrial. And there are, what do they call that? Smeltering plants, It's not exactly, I would just say Inglewood's a lot nicer than Commerce City in my mind. I would rather live here.
Well, and
That's
they
all I'm
even
gonna
have
say.
like gasoline processing plants and stuff. That probably generates a ton. Member Brinker?
Plus, we have Director DeAndrea, so we have them beat there. I mean, regardless, the households are going to pay one way or
Right.
another for their
Yeah.
trash service, whether it's kind of hidden in taxes. Although it would be heck of a fight at city council when they would announce they're raising taxes. After that, it'd be kind of just hidden, or whether it's on our utility bill. I mean, there's no free lunch here. And
Yeah.
so deciding which way it goes is, I think, probably above our pay grade. So it's definitely worth discussing if we had opinions on how to recommend to city council.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, please continue. Actually, before you continue on that one, I did have one question on Louisville. It said the bulk item collection, was that, bulk item collection event, so that means it's not at the curb, or it is at the curb?
That was just the information that was in the or the proposal from Republic. I never did get to speak to their public works director.
Okay.
I had called him before the holidays, and then what happened on the 30th. So I'm not sure if it's at the curb or just like you bring it to a park kind of event.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I did think it was interesting about Commerce City that like how close their structure was to what we asked for our large item pickup with the voucher system and all.
Mhm.
I mean, it makes me feel like what we asked for is, it's less unusual or extreme than, the reactions in our
Mhm.
proposals seem to make it.
Yeah. All right. So City of Arvada was an additional recommendation from Republic Services representative. So they weren't listed in the references, but because they just recently implemented their service, they did ask me to reach out to them, and I did, and it was very informative. So he talked a lot about the implementation process. So as you can see there, it took them 8 months really to get that fully up and running, and they would receive on average. Now they're a much larger city, probably about 3 times larger than us, but 4,000 phone calls per month. Now I'm assuming he meant both phone calls and emails, or where they would receive emails perhaps and then have to return calls or follow up with citizens in some ways, but basically touch points with citizens. And they had to hire temporary staff to handle that. And now they're still averaging, though, about 1,000 contacts per month. So they did add 2 utility billing technicians to handle that call load. And they anticipate that they're going to need that, going forward. So those were permanent positions.
Now, does that mean that they're handling all contact with citizens themselves, as opposed to our RFP has all citizen contact go through the hauler?
No, so they have a dedicated phone number, they route people to Republic Services. It's just that people call the city first. So it was, rolled out, this program by Arvada. They chose Republic Services, and just in getting it up and running, they would call the general number for Arvada. I'm sure Republic probably got direct phone calls as well once they were put in place, but this was just what the experience of the city staff was.
And did they switch from a similar situation to what Inglewood is under currently?
Yeah, where you could get basically anything, hire any licensed contractor to come in. Yeah. So
Member
this
Brown?
precludes what we would go through.
Oh, I
Right.
just wanted to say that I had read up on Arvada, and I'm sure most of you did, but people really opposed that one trash hauler. And in fact, they tried to get the council people who voted on that ousted. They were very, very unhappy. So I have not looked at Arvada lately to see what the sentiment is, but I can tell you just from reading everything, they were not for this at all.
Do you know how it got enacted? Was it a vote? Was it did they have a committee like us, or do you know anything about how it went into being?
Well, I just know from what I've read is that, yes, people were, I don't know if they had a committee, Chair Green, but I just know that the residents got together, they had petitions, and from what I read or remember, and my memory isn't always the best, but that they did get enough signatures, but the city found a lot of signatures that were bogus, I guess is the word that comes to mind. So
Are
it
you
did
talking
not
about
go through.
signatures to reverse or to reject? What I was wondering is, how did it start? Did the city just decide to do it and implement it, the city council, or do you
That's my
know?
understanding, Chair Green. If Director DeAndrea has other
Yeah, do you
information.
happen to know, Director DeAndrea?
I know it ultimately was a vote by the city council to
Okay.
implement it. I don't know exactly the impetus for how they started talking about it,
Thank you.
but I know it was over a couple of year process that they, similar to what we've been going through.
Sure.
And I don't know if they had a citizen committee, but it was a long talked about subject.
Did you have anything else, Member Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the petitions were for ousting the council people who voted for it. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Member Brinker?
I remember seeing a news article when we were working on our committee that after Arvada implemented it, that basically no one cared anymore. They
Mhm.
were really concerned at the outset about the change, and that once it was implemented, people were fine with it. So I thought that that was interesting to see. And then also about the uproar and fervor when they were considering it, we had heard that the city was flooded with misinformation,
Mhm.
including flyers on people's doors and in their mailbox from anonymous sources, eh, threatening that the sky will fall, and that civilization would come to a collapse. And it was speculated that some of that, since it was anonymous, may have come from potentially competing trash haulers who were set to lose their bids, but all of that is complete speculation since no one claimed where all the mass distribution of flyers came from.
And Director DeAndre, in these conversations, did you ask for what, for the ones that do charge citizens, what the costs are?
Oh, I didn't, but I can summarize that for you if you want. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's usually
definitely
on their
interested.
websites. I think we had done that early on, and I can update that spreadsheet. The one point, I thought I put it in here, but he did mention, to your point, Member Brinker, he didn't mention about the misinformation, but they did talk about how once they published the prices, that they had flyers distributed where other companies came in and basically undercut it by $1, the service. So they did have a lot of that. And they had, I think this says this in this last paragraph. So it's because of the HOAs, they still have a fairly high opt-out rate. And they had some people, choose to come in with the city's contractor, and then some who opted to, go back out again. And so it's still starting to kind of settle out. Oh yeah, it says it there. After they publish their prices, they've got, competitors coming in with $1 less. So, it's still, not perfect, I would say, because
Did you
they
have
didn't
something else? Oh,
require
sorry.
people. Excuse me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Director DeAndre. Did you have something else, Member Brinker? Okay, your hand is still up. I mean, just knowing what we just heard from all of that, I wonder if that's not the main reason why they're pushing against the opt-out. That could be their experience with Arvada and this underbid thing and such a large percentage of opt-out, which it's hard to say, how much of that is the HOA, because they don't really make that clear. I mean, and 18,000 households are in the program out of 42,000. That seems like a larger than 30% opt-out to me.
That's the numbers he gave me. I didn't do the math, so.
Just 18,000 is less than half of 42,000. So anyway, that
Yeah.
level of opt-out seems pretty extreme, and why I could understand a hauler if they know that that's the kind of thing they're facing when they enter an agreement like this. I could understand that. I still think that Member Brinker's idea on the opt-out structure to recommend of, if it increased past 10%, then there's like that triggers like a renegotiation point or something. Wasn't it something like that, Member Brinker? I thought that was a really reasonable and good idea, and worth seeing if we could negotiate with, like if we wanted to move forward with one of these like Republic, then that would be something worth considering to try to push back against the zero opt-out. Member Hubka?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that math is wrong, but it says the 42,000 includes HOAs who already have a service. So that's not an accurate number, but I really think at the end of the day, it'll come down to who gives us the best opt-out. I think you're absolutely right. And if we were to make a recommendation at all, it would be which company gives us the lesser of the opt-out. It's not at all. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move into the waste management references.
Yep. So waste management's, for the most part, so the town of Palisade was relatively new. As you can see there, they were implemented in 2020, but the other ones were extremely long contracts. And they had, they're a smaller city, only about 2,700 people. But so their implementation took a lot less, so about 2 to 3 months. But again, I think there was a pretty intense effort on the staff part to help facilitate that, to make that switch over, to answer phone calls and questions from people that they just couldn't, like wipe their hands of it and say, go talk to waste management. They still had to field a fair amount of that issue and work through the issues as they transition people. They do allow people, they don't require people to be in the program. So they had some people drop out, some people come in. And so it seems like that's kind of leveled off now after about 1.5 years. But very complimentary of how they respond to issues. And they did mention this reconciliation of the invoice. So they get a download or a data dump each month so that the Palisade can bill their residents. And so they've had to set up a process to just reconcile that quarterly, because they want to make sure, sounds like they've had some feedback where people are calling up and saying, well, I didn't receive this, or I didn't get this extra service or whatever. And they're having to go through and clean those things up.
Member Brown?
Yeah, I don't know if it seems like this to anybody else, but it seems like when we're comparing these other cities, that they all have kind of different programs.
Mm-hmm.
And, like some of them don't even have to opt in. They can opt out, or that they don't have to, like Republic is telling us, well, we have to stay opt in for them for 7 years. So, I'm just kind of confused why they take each city and do they have different programs for each city.
Yeah, and part of it is, like Director DeAndrea said, like some of these contracts are older, but some of them are newer and they do have full opt-outs.
Right.
So your point is valid. And even on this one, Palisade, it's unpaved alleys, similar to us. So they've got full opt-out and no problem with unpaved alleys.
And their service was implemented in 2020. So
Right.
I guess I'm kind of, do they just take each city and say, well, this is the way it's going to be? There's just no kind of, I don't know. There's no structure to any of this as far as I'm concerned, but.
I mean, with
this one
this
is
one,
waste
they're also
management.
small. 2,700
Right.
population is a lot smaller. Member Kawanabe, did you?
Nope, that was my point. It's the variables are city specific, right? And one of the population variable was probably significant in this contract.
Yeah,
so
totally.
2,700 is much smaller.
And also this one is waste management. Before we were talking about how Republic wouldn't allow opt-out without paying the base fee. Waste management, I don't think, had a problem with opting out. Per our RFP, they only said if more than 10% opt out, then they'd want to renegotiate the
Yeah,
rates.
no, I understood that, Member Brinker. I didn't mean for it to sound like one was, other, but it just doesn't seem like there's very much consistency from city to city, whether it's Republic or waste management. That was my only point.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it comes down to what's negotiated for each contract. But it is nice to see, like, well, we know that Republic is willing to do all these things for all these other cities, and we know waste management's willing to do these things for these other cities. And, those are valid points for this. I think that this reference work that you did is excellent, Director DeAndrea. I really appreciate it.
Hear, hear.
Very eye-opening. Yeah. It's definitely worth the effort. So this one from Arizona, I think there was one from Utah and New Mexico. They're ranging in sizes, but have been with waste management much longer. So again, I wanted to talk to the one that had the value share. Let's see. Yeah, that was, well, Rio Rancho. These people were so nice and so forthcoming with information too, I have to say. They were the ones who went down from the every week recycling down to the every other week recycling to try and cut back on some of those increases. They tie, this was an interesting point too. So they don't have the lesser of the, like a 3%. They just tie it straight to the water sewer trash index. So he says that has been somewhat volatile, not in the sense that it goes down, it just goes up every year. So, but in their discussions with Waste Management, you know, they felt like they've been a good partner and that, you know, at least they have something to tie it back to that's more of a national standard. And so they can justify that increase that they're, you know, their Waste Management is a business trying to make a profit. And so there's a rationale there, at least for them, that they're not abnormally or what do you call it, you know, holding them back to a set percentage. Yeah, and then I think it was the next one that they have, yeah, this was the value share. So I think that's worked pretty well for this Sandy City, Utah. Again, been with Waste Management for more than 20 years. And again, they've seen that kind of go up and go down. And they've got enough of a cushion within their budget so that if they do see those recycling rate, the fees or the costs for the recycling go up, they can basically absorb it within their budget. So if we were to go with the value share, we'd probably have to factor that into our base budget where the city would upfront some money to kind of seed the pot almost, so that we wouldn't have major fluctuations in those recycling rates from year to year. And then hopefully be able to build up a little bit of a cushion so that we could absorb those from year to year. But again, they've been in, basically had this service for so long that they've got a healthy budget in their fund balance that they can absorb that within their garbage fund.
Was the large item for Sandy City at the home?
Let's see here. If you can go down a little bit. I know it wasn't in New Mexico. It was at the curb. Two
It said
times
it's
per
provided
year.
2 times per year for items that don't fit in the standard can, but I wasn't clear if it was at the house or not. Because it said public works staff uses a loader to help place
yes.
items in a truck. What does that mean?
That was kind of weird. So it sounds like it's more like a joint effort. So they have the trucks going around from Waste Management, but then if there's really large items or, you know, there's a lot of stuff, Public Works will use their front end loader to kind of pick things up and put them in the truck as well. So it's almost
So that
like
sounds like it'd be from the home.
Yeah, it is from the home. Yeah.
Okay.
At the curb.
And your impression from talking with them was that they thought that the value share program was a success, that they were glad to be on that. And that's the only one that you talked to that had done that?
It is. Yep. So the New Mexico one, they didn't call it they didn't know the term value share, but they did see an increase in their recycling rates because of the market. And so what they did to absorb that, not do the value share, but instead they just went from every week recycling down to every other week recycling. But they did acknowledge that this is a point that Waste Management continues to bring up and that they're going to have to address it in some fashion, you know, and it's either going to be through increased rates or whatever. Like that was the one thing they could do immediately to help, you know, absorb those costs, but they're going to have to address this in some other way.
And on Litchfield Parks, that bulk item pickup every month, including yard waste and grass clippings. That's included as part of it.
Yeah.
Was that, oh, that's a 13-year-old contract. Okay.
So yeah, just a lot of different options or services out there.
Did anybody else have any questions on the references? Okay, thank you for taking us through that. Director DeAndrea, will you please go into your the CPI and WST info?
Okay, could you pull that one up, please, Michelle? All right, and can you make the screen bigger at all? See if we can just see more of that. You see more of the memo. Oh, maybe not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to, I think one of the requests was that we look at what has been the history of both the consumer price index for this water, sewer, trash index as versus the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood metro area. So I just give an explanation of, you know, who puts this together. It's the US Bureau of Labor Statistics and how they measure that. And yeah, if you continue to go down, we'll look at the graphs here. So for water, sewer, trash, the historical change since 1998, it's risen, it's basically gone up by a little over 7% per year if you straight line it out. If you continue to go down, Michelle, and we can look at that first graph or chart. Yeah, so you can see there's, it's not quite straight line. It was a little bit flatter at those early years, just between 1998 and roughly 2002. But then after that, it's increased pretty steadily each year. Okay.
And it makes sense based on why, I mean, the WST is what, not quite double the CPI on
Yeah.
average over time, and that's why they're pushing for that.
Mhm.
But at least with our or 3% or lesser of, we know that we're at the very least, if we accepted either of those, limiting it to 3.
Yeah. And I couldn't find a good chart for the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood CPI, but if you go back up to the text, Michelle, I think it's on average. I did a comparison in the text there of the memo. So it's ranged there for the last few years, anywhere from just under 2% up to 3.3%. But in this last year, it's gone up 6.5%. So, which we've all heard on the news, of course, with the inflation rates. Yeah,
In that
that's just
chart, does it specifically
oh, here we did have a chart. Yeah.
on page 4 of that, the one where it's like the table,
Mm-hmm.
it's further down. Ms. Chavez, does it have a waste or trash or recycling specific anything in that? I didn't.
It looked like it was more like food, housing, that sort of stuff, kind of your basic elements. Not that trash and water and sewer aren't basic elements, but I didn't specifically see that in that
Yeah,
makeup.
I didn't either.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, fuels and utilities, apparel. Oh, wait, no, motor fuel. Okay, yeah.
Did anyone have any questions about indexes? I appreciate the info. Thanks for getting that in there.
Mhm.
So the next thing you've got on the agenda is waste management smart trucks. Is that different than what's just in their response materials, or was that a topic that you had specific information about?
Yeah, I believe member Hubka had wanted to talk a little bit more about that
Okay.
when we had received that supplementary material.
Okay. So, but that is in the,
Their
basically in
response
their
to
response,
our
right?
questions, correct, yep.
Member Hubka, did you go through that? Did that satisfy what you were looking for? Did you have anything on that you wanted to discuss?
Well, it certainly is an advantage in recycling fees because, you know, we're going to pay for what's not recyclable. And we talked a lot about how we as a community want to educate people about what they're supposed to be putting in there. So this smart truck will tell people, we'll take in the recycling and tell people, hey, you just put this type of plastic in there, or rather, most of the time, we literally put it in trash. I walk around with my dogs and I look at the recycling and they just put trash in there. Or maybe they think that a pizza box is recyclable because it's cardboard. But once you've got that pizza sauce and everything on it, pizza boxes are not recyclable. So it is a nice tool to teach people about what you can put in that recyclable container that could benefit us as far as what fees we're going to get when we're not able to get that cost back for recycling. So I don't know, I just liked it because of that very idea. It's lower on the totem pole of things that we're discussing, it's with it's low on the totem pole of things that we want, but it is a very nice thing because I think a lot of cost is a lot of stuff is wasted, because if you just throw all your trash in with your recycling, then the whole thing is trash and you're not recycling.
Yeah, I mean, that's why China stopped taking our recycling, was because of the crazy contamination levels. And I mean, in some ways, that's probably effectively become a good thing, because it's forced us to have domestic reuse of recycling, more locally. It's probably better overall. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense about, and I would assume that over time, they're all going to move towards better technology for identifying, the contaminants.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think you're very right. Eventually they will, because they do get a cost, especially for aluminum right now. Aluminum is very good, and they get that cost back. And if they want to survive in this market, they almost have to start utilizing some tools like this so that they can teach the consumer. It shouldn't be all on the city to tell the consumer to wash your cat food cans, So that's all I have to say about that.
Did you have anything else to add, Director DeAndrea? Okay. Thanks, Member Hubka. And then, unless anyone else had anything else on that. Okay, let's move on to the tipping fees.
See if I can pull that one up here. There we go.
And just to start with on this, can you refresh our memories on one of them? They're planning on going through the Oxford transfer station, and one is not, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so this, I just want to make sure I understand how this factors into what that means overall.
Yeah. So right now, and this was Member Brown had asked to kind of revisit this again. So this is what we collect. I couldn't get in time the actual dollar amount from 2020. The person in finance was unavailable, but let's say these are the correct numbers. So this is what the city receives, because we have a special section of the municipal code that allows us to get a 50 cents per cubic yard fee, basically, from the waste management waste transfer station over on Oxford Avenue for anybody who drops off anything over there. So we can only assume at this point that if waste management picks up materials from a variety of homes in Inglewood, they bring it to the station, and then we get 50 cents per each of those cubic yards of materials. If Republic happens to pick up, I don't know if they bring it to this waste Oxford station or not, or if other haulers, whoever uses the Oxford transfer station, basically, whether they're collecting in Inglewood or outside of Inglewood, whoever is using that Oxford transfer station pays, then the city gets a portion of that. And the rationale for that is that there's additional wear and tear on the streets because we're a generator. So more trucks are coming to that site And therefore, the intent would be is that we mitigate, they have to mitigate that additional wear and tear by paying this 50-cent fee. So to your point, Chair Green, I don't know if we can estimate that this will go up or down depending on which hauler we might choose. I guess you could assume if Waste Management, for instance, got the contract, now if Republic, for instance, was taking it to a different site, now everything in Inglewood would come here. How much that would go up, I can't, I couldn't estimate that. So.
And if Republic got the contract and they're saying that they would not use the Oxford transfer station, then we know that this amount is going to go down. And how would that affect things for the city?
I don't know, because I don't think we could estimate how much it will go up or down either way. So we don't have a good handle right now on, how much of this is really of this amount. Is that from waste generated within Inglewood? Is it, maybe it's 50,000 of this whole dollar amount. So if it goes up a few thousand here or there because of who we picked, does that make a difference? I can't even begin to guess at what those estimates are.
Does this go into the general fund?
It does.
Member Brown, did you have any other questions on this?
Yeah, I was just curious. So for 2020, it's a 775,000. Now, does that amount go into Inglewood's general fund?
Correct. Yep.
So I guess I'm still curious as to why, if they make that much money in a year, the city, why could they not pay for our pickup, our garbage pickup? That's a lot of money.
Well, I think, if we did enter into a contract, let's just assume the $25 per household times, 9,300. Again, I'll do the math, not in my head, but, this is about a $2.9 million contract per year. So basically the city would have to come up with roughly $3 million to fund this program. So that's certainly a policy decision, and we could, just similar to the senior citizen discount, we could bring that back if the committee so chose to make that a point of discussion with the city council. But we're probably talking about a $3 million, budget item. And to your point, this potentially could offset that.
Okay.
But right now, somebody's using this $800,000 per year within the general fund.
And then if we went with Republic, though, we would not be having this dollar amount going into the general fund. Am I correct on that? Because they would not be using the Oxford transfer station.
We could probably assume that it would go down slightly, but because if Waste Management is servicing a certain number of households in Inglewood right now, and they no longer were taking that material to the Oxford transfer station, then we could assume that this would go down. I just can't estimate by how much it would go down.
Okay, thank
you.
you.
A few thousand? Is it, tens of thousands? I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
That is an interesting thought, though, like just to put this out there for the committee. Say we did want to recommend, a proposal, whether we push back on things or recommend that the city council negotiate, it is something that we could potentially throw in there and say, why don't we sweeten the pot and recommend that whatever this amount is go towards reducing the cost to individuals. Is just a thought, because if say it did cost 3 million a year for the city to provide trash, and nearly one of those million could be taken out, that could cause it to be more inexpensive for citizens, or use all or a portion of that for, elderly, disabled, low income, et cetera. I mean, there's different, because this is a waste recycling, income the city takes in, it does seem like it, if the city's making such a big change to switch to a single hauler, why not include this as an offset to the overall cost for citizens? It's just a thought.
One of the problems I would just see with that is a lot of that money is already appropriated on something every year. It might go up by a significant amount, though, that we might get some to offset the cost to low income people, though. I think that's definitely worth a thought for sure.
I'd be hesitant in promising anything because we're purely speculating on the increase on that income, right? I think it's something to consider once the program's been implemented.
Any other questions or thoughts on the tipping fee stuff? Okay. All right, let's talk about this survey. So Director Andrea, can you tell us where did this come from? What is the thoughts around this? What is the plan around this?
Yep. So the intent would be is that we would, I put this in a PowerPoint just to make it easier to read. So the intent would be is that we want to, I think I mentioned at our last meeting, we want input from the Citizens Committee, but we also wanted to take out the actual, once we have the information on costs, that we wanted to get feedback from the community on if this was reasonable or not. And so the intent of this outreach effort would be to do a couple of public meetings, to do some, basically education around this via the social media on the city's website, and then do this survey to see if, again, to gauge citizen interest in if this is the cost, would you be interested in moving forward with the program? And it's another data point basically for the city, the council to consider. So that would be the intent of this.
So my first question on that is if it includes the description on the first page of the communications plan, it includes things like the large item pickup. It's got alley and curb, and then it's making an assumption about cost, but these are things we know that there's already pushback on. And if we were going to put a survey out, then I think it would need to, I would consider it misleading right now, because if I read this and I got these questions and I was to answer question 4, yeah, if I've got alley and alley trash and recycling and large item pickup vouchers and everything else that we put in the RFP. But if not, then no. And this doesn't take into account any of that nuance.
And I think it would. So the intent would be is before you got the questions that we'd have to explain all of that. So it's like, here's the base service. And by the way, one provider is not going to provide alley service. So this definitely has to be prefaced with some text to explain this, not just be given the survey.
Member Hubka?
Yeah, and that text is why we're doing this, because the text is, would you be in favor of less trucks on the street? And Maria, what is the cost? I'm sorry, Director DeAndrea. What is the cost to taxpayers in street repair, if we can estimate that at all? Because that's one of the reasons we're doing this. We're not doing it because we want just one trash service. We want less trucks up and down and all of this crazy business all the time. So we have to somehow frame that that's the point of all this too. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Good
And
point.
some of that is in there, remember Hubka, because it does talk about those benefits. It was just like some of the things that are in it right now are what we asked for in the RFP, but that currently we don't have a proposal that fulfills. Member Brown?
Yeah, I would really appreciate if when we do this survey, if it's either done by postcards or door hangers, because not everyone is going to look on the city site. And I just think that would be, you would get a better response if that were the case.
And I think that's a very important point, and that's also supported by the one public input we got. That was something I forgot to mention when I summarized that email earlier. She also made that, or he or she, I don't even know, made that same point that a lot of people are not going to be participating in online surveys, and that's going to skew towards you know, a demographic of the population that doesn't represent everyone. And a lot of the people who are left out of an online only survey are probably elderly, fixed income people that, you know, their input matters too. And
I agree.
What's
what
the
was that?
cost implication on something like that?
I think
Yeah.
we could definitely accommodate that. Basically, what we would do in the postcard is
Mhm.
allow, we'd say you can do it online, or you can contact us and we can mail you a paper ballot. So we're gonna probably do a postcard to everybody. So that cost is already built in, and then it'd just be, if people want to do a paper ballot, then there would be postage back and forth for that.
So how do we get to where we like personally, I would like us to be able to have input on the structure of the survey, because like right now it doesn't even mention Ally in the questions, and that's what we've heard from citizens is like the most important thing.
Well,
You
and
know,
that's why so the intent is that we would get your input tonight, because the intent would be as we put this survey out within the next couple of weeks and leave it open for the month of February. I didn't mention the alleys because I think we've already gotten really good response on that. So you can certainly add that question again, but I think that's again, we kind of know the answer to that one already.
well, but
We do.
it's relevant, but when you put out a survey that doesn't mention that and ask questions that, you know, anyone who cares about that or nuance in general can't legitimately answer without being able to specify that. I mean, I get that we know that that matters, but I think because we know that matters, that justifies why it needs to be a part of the questions. And we're at 8:04 right now, and I know not everybody can just go past our time. And I think we need more time to discuss this and structure questions. So I think we need to move this to our next meeting to get input, and, you know, probably if anyone really cares about this, you know, send in to Director DeAndrea and myself any thoughts that we can then incorporate in our discussion in our next meeting. Remember
Well, then we
Hubka?
need to do that relatively quickly if we want to stay on this time frame, because I'm afraid if we did move forward, and this shows in the schedule, is that, you know, we start to butt up against, you know, the fall and the time frame for implementation. So I think the intent is, you know, to come back to City Council in at least the March, April timeframe to bring this to a decision.
Right. And what I was going to say is that in the survey, we don't ask people if they want alley service. It is assumed. It is assumed. Here's what we're asking. There will be alley and street service. How do you feel? And then go with this. Go with these questions. At some point, we do have to hand this off to city staff and trust that they know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, okay, I would like to meet again And I understand that you have an aggressive timeline, Director DeAndrea, and I'm not trying to push back against that, but I do think this needs more input from this committee before especially the expense is put into putting this out. And let's make sure that it represents accurately, you know, what it should. And we've been able to meet in the past twice a month. And it's been a while since we met, but that was also over the end of the year and the holidays. I'm certainly willing to meet again in 2 weeks. Is there, if everyone could do that, then we could be very close to your desired timeline if we could work through this in our next meeting in a couple of weeks. Is that acceptable to you, Director DeAndrea?
Was there the possibility of meeting next week? If this is a point that we want to just focus on this and do a kind of a focused meeting just on the questions, could we do that?
I could make it work.
Same here. I can make that happen.
Not Tuesday.
And not Wednesday for me. What about Thursday?
Is best.
That works.
Let me look at your calendar.
Is there anyone that cannot do Thursday next week?
Yeah, like, what's Thursday? The 3rd?
The 3rd.
I would have to be late, 6:15.
How late?
6:15. That's it.
That's reasonable. That you wouldn't miss out if, I mean, we would have just started discussion. And I would like to say, I mean, since clearly I'm one of the ones who cares about this a lot, I'll put time into making some suggestions and get that to Director DeAndrea so it can be included. And if anyone else has any input, then let's do that. I think that's, since you want to move that this fast, I'm willing to meet next Thursday. It sounds like that works for everyone with just a delay for member Hubco, which is reasonable. So let's plan for 6 p.m. next Thursday. And our primary goal will be to iron out what this survey will look like.
So I'll develop the text that would go in the front of it too, the front end. So you could basically, this is the background. Then you go to, okay, and now here's the question. So I don't think that was made very clear in the communication plan. So.
Okay. And the soonest you can get us that structure, since we're going out of our way to meet again, you know, just in a week, give us a few days with that so we can consume that and make our thoughts documented and get them to you. Is that fair? Can we have that structure then? Like,
I will try my best.
by the end of Tuesday. All right. And then, so we've got our next meeting scheduled.
For 6 or for 6:30?
What 6 is what we've been doing. Is that
But
not work for you?
member,
I mean, I'm
I was
fine
gonna
with
say, go ahead and
6:30
say-
if that makes it work better for member Hubka.
You know what? Kanji was late tonight. How about I just be late? You know, that's fine. I can just be late. Oh, is that okay? I mean, either way is fine. You want to do 6:30? That would be great.
Does 6:30 not work for anyone? Did you're saying that member Kawanabe, that didn't work for you?
No, that's fine for me.
Okay, then
Okay.
does anyone have a problem with 6:30 to 8:30 on Thursday next week?
Well, I would prefer 6 o'clock, actually.
It wouldn't be 2 hours, would it?
It probably won't. Yeah, I think you're right, member Kawanabe. All right, member Brown, prefer or unable?
Prefer.
Okay, then let's make it 6:30 because
to 8, we could still try to end by 8.
yeah, I think that's reasonable. Let's try to do it 6:30. We'll schedule it for 6:30 to 8. And we'll do that next Thursday. And Director DeAndrea will get us a draft as soon as possible. So we have at least a couple days to review and respond, and then we can dig into it in our next meeting. And then we'll also still have these other, because I do think we need to discuss that administrative fee memo as well. and we should have time for both. Chairperson's choice, I don't have anything. Committee members' choice, I know Member Brown, you brought something up. Did you want to talk about that more?
Yeah, I would like to, and it's not going to take long, but this is towards Director DeAndrea. I saw the council meeting on Monday when you spoke to council, and I was just curious as to, you had said to some council members that you thought that the maximum increase over 7 years would be $4 to $5. I saw, I'm not trying to put you on a spot, but I'm not sure how you got that figure, $4 to $5 over a 7-year period on our trash bill.
Yeah, so that's per month. So I think.
Oh, per month.
Correct. So it's like we talked about earlier, it's $9 per year. Let's just say if it's $25. So 3% on over a year's time is 9. So I think that's a good point. And what they asked to clarify is show both per month and then per year, so that that's very clear. So I think
Okay.
that is correct over that, what did I say, 7-year period, but that's on a per month basis. So over
Okay,
the 7-year, you would see an increase basically from whatever we start at to no more than $5.
per month.
Correct.
Okay, and then just one other comment is that I noticed a few council members last Monday were saying, what would it look like putting this on a ballot for the people to vote on?
Yeah, and that's
And-
why I had that last question is ask that very question
Yeah,
of the,
I
of
mean,
the community.
I think that's important to make sure that's on whatever we decide for the questions, because I was kind of amazed at, I know we have a different council now, but I was kind of amazed at how many asked that. So that's just my comment for the night. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Member Brown. Did anyone else have anything? Okay, then let's adjourn and we'll reconvene next Thursday. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.